Hello and welcome back to the Scenario 7 podcast. My name is Sam and I'm joined by Mr. Joe Roberts. Joe, how are you doing, mate?
I'm doing well, Sam. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well. And today we are bringing you a Singapore Grand Prix preview. We haven't been here in a while, so it's great to be back doing stuff around Singapore, a fantastic track. But before we move on to that, we are going to look back at the Italian Grand Prix. It was quite a few weeks ago now. We were meant to have the Russian Grand Prix last week, of course, before it was cancelled. So we had an extra large break before this race. But let's go back and look at the Italian Grand Prix. Joe, what did you think of the race?
I thought it was exciting. And then obviously it got a bit boring to the end. Just obviously the safety car kind of had play of that, but I think it was kind of the right decision in terms of the regulations, which they have to follow, the FIA have to follow, like they didn't at some points last year. So yeah, it was good to see that they followed it. Obviously, from a sport like watching aspect, it was, for me, I wanted to see racing, but yeah, in terms of that aspect, it was a bit disappointing. But yeah, the Mercedes surprisingly looked strong with Russell. I can't remember what happened to Hamilton, but it was kind of like a masterclass from Verstappen in terms of just dominating the weekend.
Yeah, well, Hamilton actually did really well. Him and Sainz both started at the back of the grid taking penalties. A lot of drivers ended up taking penalties, meaning we had a nice mixed up grid. And Sainz and Hamilton ended up finishing fourth and fifth, both gaining 14 places. And the way they cut their way through the field, especially Sainz in the early laps, was made the race really exciting. You had Ferrari under the spotlight again. It was Leclair versus Verstappen. You had Leclair, who was comfortably in front, and they decided to give up track position to put on a set of softs and then try and chase Verstappen. And hindsight's a wonderful thing. It didn't end up being the right call. And they did get criticised for this. It's tough because, of course, as I said, hindsight's a wonderful thing. It ended up being the wrong strategy. And how many strategy blunders have they made this year? So many. But I don't think this is their worst one. And other than that, got to mention Nick de Vries filling in for Alex Albon and had a fantastic debut, finishing P9, which got him 2 points, which is half of the points that Albon has got in the entirety of the season. So that just shows how good a result this is in that car. I said before the race that the Williams was going to be good. I may have said that the driver that was going to capitalise that was Latifi. Didn't end up happening. We'll forget about that. But I did say, Joe, didn't I? I did say the Williams would be quick.
Yeah, but the thing is, Sam, you didn't say that it would be Nick de Vries, and now three teams are lining up. Well, three or four teams are now lining up for his for him to be in one of their seats. I think it's like AlphaTauri, Alpine, Haas, and I can't remember the other one. Williams, obviously. Oh, Williams, obviously. So yeah, you kind of got it right, but I didn't expect it to be Nick de Vries. And the fact is, it basically all the F1 teams are suddenly now looking at him when he was pretty good when he won the championship, F2 championship a couple of seasons ago, and obviously he's the Formula E champion as well.
Yeah. So, as you said, kind of right, kind of wrong. I said Latifi would get points, and we're now doing a preview, and he hasn't even got a seat for next year. So that just shows you how that went and how brilliantly Nick de Vries did. But yeah, you've already mentioned the safety car. Didn't provide us with a very exciting finish, but they followed the rules. And I think at this point, after last season, just following the rules is what you've got to do. But let's move on from the last race in Monza. And let's look at the news from this week playing Have I Got F1 News for You? And this is where I read a headline. Joe's got to guess the missing words. It's really easy this week because I just want to talk about a few of the talking points that have to do with it. So let me read you the headline. Joe, you'll easily get it. Alfa Romeo confirmed driver lineup for 2023 with contract extension for
Guan Yu Zhou, I think. Yeah.
the article says Zhou Guan Yu, so you're wrong. No, I'm joking. But no, you're completely right. Zhou Guan Yu will stay with Alfa Romeo for the 2023 Formula One season. An announcement ahead of this weekend's Singapore Grand Prix confirmed the team's lineup for next year, with Valtteri Bottas partnering the Chinese driver. Guan Yu has scored 6 points during his rookie season in F1, and his extension leaves only seats at Williams, Haas, and Alpine to be filled before the 2023 grid is fully confirmed. Now, Joe, I've got 2 questions here. First question, do you think that Zhou's had a good rookie season?
I would say average. I think it's kind of, how do I describe? I think it's kind of hard to like describing how F2 drivers then moved to F1, because obviously you had Mazepin last year, you had Tsunoda and all that sort of drivers. I would put him in maybe in the camp of Tsunoda in terms of the fact, yes, Tsunoda was a kind of erratic and just did like loads of mistakes, but he's kind of been consistent in the first half. In the second half, it's been average, but that's just due to the car. But yeah, I think it's the right decision in the way that just to develop a driver. I would personally prefer to see Drogovic in that car, just because he's deserves a seat. He's won F2. He's been fantastic. He reminds me of a driver where you had the generation of Charles Leclair and Lando Norris being in that sort of category. So, yeah, it's the right decision in terms of to develop him. But if he doesn't perform, I haven't actually seen how long the contract is. But if he doesn't perform, I see it as next season, I see it as a bit of a waste opportunity for Alfa Romeo.
Yeah, I actually think that's quite harsh, because I think Zhou's had a good season. He has been massively let down by his car. I mean, the reliability issues he's had this year have been crazy. But the main thing you have to do as a rookie is just kind of put your stamp on the team. And he has outperformed Bottas. I mean, not consistently through the season, but in a fair few races, enough races for you to like sit up and go, he's had a good year. And when you're in a car like that, that's all you have to do. 6 points is solid. He could potentially pick up some more before the end of the season.
But how many points has Bottas got?
Yeah, of course, Bottas has got a lot more, but at the end of the day, we're talking about someone who was driving in a Mercedes last year and someone who was driving in F2 last year. So the difference in quality, of course, is going to be huge. Bottas is like 10 years older as well. So I think that it's been a good rookie season. He's beaten his teammate on occasion. I think you've been quite harsh. And it does pose a question about Drogovic, which I don't really want to go into now, about whether he deserves a seat. But yeah, that's an interesting one. And maybe we'll talk about that on another podcast, maybe.
Well,
But
I'll just go on it quite briefly. I think there is a kind of a question: does the champion of the F2 category deserve a seat rather than kind of being paid into that F1 that Joe has? And obviously Tsunoda being part of the Red Bull family that the Red Bull actually use now. So obviously, so Tsunoda going to because of the Red Bull family. And then you got Mazepin buying his way into the Haas seat. It does beg the question, I think, because Nick de Vries missed out because I forgot which rookie. He's not in F1 anymore, but he missed out because of basically a driver paid himself into that seat. It doesn't really seem right when for example, a talent like Nick de Vries, which he's shown in the Williams, actually kind of linking it back into the Italian point, that he showed his talent, he should be given a seat. So there's an argument to say, does Drogovic deserve a seat? Like Schumacher got one at Haas a couple of seasons back.
Yeah, the thing that I think holds Drogovic back is that he had a fantastic season in F2. He was completely dominant. His nearest competitor was Porsche, who did well, but Drogovic was in a different league. But the thing that's held him back is that he's won it in his third season. And that has often been the thing that holds drivers back, because they're mainly up against drivers who are in their first or second season. So they have a lot more, apart from Roy Nissany, who's in about his 20th season in F2 and is still awful. But you have Drogovic, who's in his third season, so he's got a lot more experience than everyone else. So I think that's what holds it against him. But he's got a good payday. He's going to Aston Martin, development driver, replacing Hulkenberg, who we might talk about him now, because my second question is, well, I mentioned that the seats to be filled at Alpine, Haas, Williams. Who, Joe, do you think are going to take these seats? And if you think that a driver at another team will take the seat, who do you think will come in to that driver filling the spot? And I think we're both thinking of the same driver for that.
I think if you're thinking about it, I think Alpine can have free range, because Haas and Williams don't really can't compete with in terms of car performance and like money. So I don't really know. They could easily go Ricciardo. I see them Nick de Vries being an option there. I've heard that AlphaTauri are looking at him. I think Haas, I would go Ricciardo or Hulkenberg, just due to the fact it's a team which needs experience at the moment. I think it's a team that doesn't need to develop drivers because it doesn't have the finance. It needs to have quality drivers straight off the bat. But yeah, I would then put Nick de Vries as AlphaTauri. It's obviously rumours that's happening and that's potentially going to be confirmed. Alpine, I would like to see Schumacher or Jack doing. I wouldn't say they both deserve a shot, because I don't, as I probably get into, maybe we'll talk about in another podcast how Schumacher's kind of underperformed, but I think it will kind of test him, maybe give him a 1-year contract and then look at options elsewhere, just due to the fact of the contract scenarios for next season. And then it was at Williams. I would try, I don't know, Logan Sargent's been mentioned, so probably him as well. But the thing is that Hulkenberg, I think, is the key to unraveling what's actually going to happen. Because if he goes to Haas, then it means Schumacher will have to move out of F1 or find a seat. And then obviously you got Nick de Vries, which I think will get a seat. It's just where.
Yeah. Well, Hulkenberg, as you said, I think could be the key. He's already left Aston Martin because of the appointment of Felipe Drogovic. And I think that this Hulkenberg leaving Aston Martin is because he has a guaranteed seat next year. I think that without that, I think that Drogovic would just be a part of the driver academy and wouldn't necessarily be the reserve driver. So these are the picks I've gone for. I think Alpine will get Gasly. I think they'll pay to break his contract and bring in Gasly. I think AlphaTauri will go for Nick de Vries. You mentioned him. Could go for Liam. Yeah. Could go for Liam Lawson as well if they decide to go down the Red Bull route. Haas, I think it will be Nico Hulkenberg, but someone else being touted is Antonio Giovinazzi. And there's a potential there with, of course, the links to Ferrari and them being Haas's engine supplier. But, of course, Schumacher could keep that seat potentially. But then Williams, I think that Schumacher could be in contention for that seat. And if not, I agree with you. Logan Sargent is who I'd go for. But yeah, they are my picks. And yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll see.
Yeah, sorry, Sam. The reason I go back to Logan Sargent is because they're owned now by an American um, capital firm. So I think it makes sense for them going American. It's the same with Haas potentially looking in the future to go American as well.
Yeah, and of course AlphaTauri tried to bring in Colin Herter, but just couldn't get the super license points. Now let's actually move on to why we're here to preview the Singapore Grand Prix, starting with the track, and they will be driving around the Marina Bay Street Circuit, which is a 5.063 kilometer circuit with 3 DRS zones, 23 corners, and 61 laps. Joe, what are your thoughts on the track?
I honestly think this is a track that I think every fan should look forward to. It's going to sound quite weird. For me, it's Monaco. It's Monaco, but at night, and it's lessons that Monaco can follow in kind of maybe making the circuit longer around Monte Carlo, maybe making just the barriers bigger to make it more exciting. And this track as well, you can overtake, so it makes it more exciting. There's crashes. I've looked at the weather forecast, and I don't know the times that they raise, but there's apparently meant to be monsoon rain. There's meant to be heavy rain, so we could have been doing this preview and it being called off, which is a chance that it happening. But overall, this is a circuit that is being missed and should stay on the calendar for many years to come as well.
Yeah, I am a big fan of the Singapore circuit. It's a bumpy, high-speed street circuit. It's very high downforce. It's really unique, especially at like turn 18, which you have the drivers pass underneath a grandstand. You really don't have that anywhere else in the world. It's just it has a really cool aesthetic. It's, for me, the pinnacle of night racing. You will not have a better night race in Formula One for me. It is just fantastic. I just love it so much. And it's had loads of entertaining races in the past. Despite it being a street circuit, despite it being really fast, it often throws up drama. It can throw up surprises. I mean, like, the iconic one in recent times was where it was Raikkonen, Vettel, and Verstappen, was it, into turn one, and both had this massive collision, wiping out other cars as well. So we get some nice lap one drama as well. But yeah, I love the Marina Bay Street Circuit. Let's look back at the last race in Singapore, and well, in most previews this year, we've been looking back to just last year. But this time we're having to look back to 2019 because that was the last time they raced here. And let me just quickly run through some of the key points that happened, as it was quite an eventful race when Leclair got pole with Hamilton second and Vettel third. That was on the Saturday. During the race, you had on lap one, Nico Hulkenberg and Carlos Sainz colliding at turn 5, with both cars suffering punctures. On lap 19, Vettel pits to undercut frontrunner Leclerc, who made his thoughts very clear on team radio what he thought about that. On lap 34, Ricciardo dived down the inside of Giovinazzi at turn 7, suffering a puncture. Lap 36, Grosjean and Russell make contact at turn 8, leaving Russell in a wall and bringing out a safety car. On lap 41, Lance Stroll tapped the wall and suffered a puncture at turn 17. On lap 43, Perez retired from the race with an oil leak, bringing out another safety car. And to complete the hat-trick of safety cars, on lap 50, Danny Kvyat dived down the inside of Raikkonen at turn 1, leaving Kimi in a wall and bringing out a safety car. This race ended with Vettel winning in first, second was Leclerc, third was Verstappen, with Ferrari getting a 1-2 with their illegal engine. Joe, what is a memory you have from the 2019 race in Singapore?
I'll just say that, let's go back what you said first, the Leclerc bickering about Vettel. I think looking back on it, I think Ferrari were just trying to put Mercedes into a corner that they can't get undercut. Mercedes had were a bit not, I think, trying to overdo it, and basically should have undercutted rather than overcutted, and they kind of themselves in a position where they were behind Hamilton. And yes, you can overtake, but it's still very, very difficult. And then just the fact that Leclair was second when he should have basically dominated and won this race, and I think it's Vettel's last ever victory. So it's kind of bittersweet in a way that yes, Vettel won, and it was a very good drive from him, but Ferrari kind of screwed it up in terms of internal fighting between the drivers, which happens. And obviously, I think, I think Leclerc won Monza anyway, the previous race. I think it's, yeah. So it kind of made up for it, but you just have to be understanding why Leclerc was annoyed about that particular scenario.
Yeah, certainly. That was definitely one of the main talking points in that race, and was probably the beginning or early on in the spiral that we've seen of Ferrari with their legal engine, and then they're dropping down the grid, and now their awful strategy. The memory I've gone for is surrounding Danny the Torpedo Kvyat. I mean, everyone's favourite driver, a Toro Rosso legend, I think it's fair to say. And Kvyat earned his name for being a bit erratic. So when he dived down the inside of Kimi Raikkonen at turn one, I think it's fair to say nobody was surprised. He completely misjudged the corner, flew into the Alfa Romeo's front left tyre, wrecked the suspension, and left Kimi stranded, bringing out a third safety car in that race. And just a reminder that this legendary driver existed. I thought every time I say his name, I get massive nostalgic vibes from that period of Formula One. But I was very close to choosing the amount of punches that people got, because I'm pretty sure in the end there were 4 or 5 in the whole race, which is quite a lot considering the track, and they were all made in wheel-to-wheel combat, which was pretty cool. But let's move on to the predictions. And first of all, looking at the predictions table after Monza, of course, all the points now are done on averages, as it gives everyone the chance to compete, despite not everyone being here every week. And in first place, keeping his place at the top of the table, Josh Bacon with an average of 3 points. In second is Matt Collier, 2.9 points. In the third is me with 2.8 points. It's really close at the top. I got 4 points last race in Italy. And Joe, you're fourth with 2.3 points, which is a big leap in your average, to be fair. Also getting 4 points in Italy. And we both actually got the podium spot on. So 3 of our points was from just getting the podium completely right, which is a great achievement. And then we've got Robert in fifth on 0.5 points. And let me just quickly run through what we're going to be predicting and what we normally predict every week. So the first 5 things we predict are the first accident, first safety car / red flag / VSC, first pit stop, first blue flag. And with all of them, it's the lap that you think is going to happen on, and then most overtakes and how many overtakes. So that's the first thing we predict. And I'm going to go first with these. And for first accident,
change your mind.
Joe has decided to completely go off his notes and decided, you know what, let's do it off the cuff. So for first accident, I've decided to theme it around Singapore 2019 for a bit of fun. So first accident, I've gone Carlos Sainz on lap 1, because he crashed on lap 1 last time in Singapore. So that's why I've gone for him. For first safety car / red flag, I've gone for Ricardo on lap 1. Lap 1's always quite a safe choice. He got a puncture in the last race in Singapore. He's normally in around the midfield. Could see some carnage happen. First pit stop, I've gone Lance Stroll, also lap 1. Got a puncture in Singapore 2019. I've got a nice little theme for first blue flag. I mean, it was Robert Kubica racing for Williams back then. But so I'm breaking away from the theme, but I've gone for Nicholas Latifi, lap 32. I will never not predict him again after my nightmare last week. And then for most overtakes, I will go for Sebastian Vettel with 6, as the Aston Martins made a lot of gains in Hungary, which is also a high downforce track. So I feel like it could potentially happen again. But Joe, what are your predictions?
The funny thing is, Sam, I've gone for science as well. Lap 1, but it's a different kind of theme. So it's lap 1. Then I think Ferrari will try and put the pressure on Red Bull, and I think Verstappen will crash out. I think science will cause the collision, in order to put some bit of dirty tactics into play. And then I predicted Vettel to pit lap 1, so kind of the same theme as you in terms of Aston Martin. Then Latifi, I don't know how many laps there are.
There are 61 laps.
Okay. I'm going to predict 30. Yeah, 30 laps. And then also Norris to lap 4, to be the highest with 4 overtakes as well.
Very interesting. Just to clear up, so your first accident is Sainz lap 1, and your first safety car is Verstappen lap 1.
Yeah.
Okay, just so I could clear that up. Cool. That sounds very entertaining, and that would make
this won't work if Sainz isn't next to Verstappen.
Yeah, you've kind of shot yourself in the foot a bit.
Yeah,
but I like the thinking. You've gone bold, and now let's predict our podium for Sunday. I'll go first, and in first place, I've gone for Max Verstappen, because Max Verstappen wins every race at the moment, might break records. But it's in second and third where I've gone quite interesting. In second, I think I've gone, I know I've gone for Lewis Hamilton. And in third, I've gone for George Russell. And my reasoning for the Mercedes being second and third is that Mercedes looked really quick at high downforce tracks. Just looking back to Hungary, they did really well. Christian Horner's spoken in the week about how he thinks that Mercedes will be a threat this weekend. And for me, in terms of a track that suits their car, I think that this is their last chance at a race win this year. I think this could be their last chance at a race win. I mean, of course, Hamilton might win in Brazil because he just loves Brazil. But for me, in terms of their car, it's the last realistic chance at a race win. But Joe, have you copied me for the second week in a row to get some free points?
No. As in you copy me. I think I have to point that out. But I haven't copied you. Because I've gone for Hamilton to win, because of the theme of Max obviously crashing. Second, Russell, and then third, Leclair. That's so. Yeah, the reason I've gone Leclair is just because the Ferrari I think would do well against Perez.
That's a bold prediction. I like it. You're following through with your Verstappen's going to crash, and that would make it a very interesting race. I do want to see Mercedes win a race this year, and it'd be even nicer if it is Hamilton. But that wraps up our podcast, pretty much doing everything. I mean, this is a Singapore preview, but we've also looked at the Italian Grand Prix and looked at some of the news. But as always, thank you for listening. Remember to like, subscribe, comment your predictions down below. If you want to stay up to date with everything happening at the Scenario 7 podcast, our links are in our bio. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.